All right, so Jay did not say that they were ready to start going, but I started recording.
Yeah,
Welcome
okay.
to the Sexual Techniques.
Trying to pretend or...
Jay is currently looking at TikToks on their phone. Jay, pronouns they, them. My name is Lily, pronouns she, her, so that you have that in your fucking brain, you fucking weirdo.
Brain. Goddamn piecing shit.
You fucking pronoun freak.
Bitch.
Gotta know everyone's pronouns. Well.
Hey, did you turn into a like mind virus Joe Biden zombie at 2:20 p.m. today?
Did I?
I'm asking, like, did it work? Did the emergency broadcast system turn you into a woke mind virus?
Oh, yeah.
Lethal vaccine injection?
My skin instantly rotted off entirely, all at once, and revealed scales. I was a lizard person the whole time, and I found out that I'm also kind of like a squid, and also I have a shield that blocks 5G rays, and so I can blend in with the rest of the world, but really I'm just really amazingly camouflaged. Like, you would never know the difference. Like, you could literally fucking stab
Except that
me.
you, like, blink sideways.
Not like my camouflage, like it makes it so that when I blink, like, to you, it looks like there's
it looks
mirror.
normal, but
it's smoke and mirrors.
Oh my god.
You could not understand what level.
Yeah, okay, so what about in a mirror? So you blink that, normal in a mirror, but whatever to the viewer, but then in the mirror it's like you're going sideways like a vampire, you can't see him or whatever.
What the fuck are you talking about?
You can't see vampires in the mirror.
Yeah, you can't see vampires in the mirror. What does that have to do with lizards and blinking sideways? It would just look like I'm blinking normally with my cloaking technology, but reversed. Jesus Christ. I can't believe you right now. God. I thought that this was a scientific endeavor that we were embarking upon.
Yeah, I pulled out, as soon as it went off, I, made a couple snaps, just quick videos of me with, the Chad face filter, and it was, me at 2:19 p.m., and then I, found a zombie filter, and it was, me at 2:20, infected with Mopine virus, and I don't know if I'm going to upload those anywhere, but it was a funny joke at the time.
I think it would have only been good if you uploaded it, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
After it happened.
I was at work, I was literally on a ladder at work, so I, just got the videos really quick. I'm on my phone a surprising amount while I'm up on a ladder. It's a really good place to pull your phone out.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's just, like I was saying, we definitely didn't scrap 20 minutes of this because we weren't having enough fun. We definitely didn't. No, so anyway, but during that 20 minutes of scrap media that we definitely did not record, I mentioned, ladders are just tranquil as fuck once you get past the anxiety, and so just doing relaxing things like pulling out your phone, lighting up a cigarette, fucking hits crazy.
Hits crazy hard. Yeah.
So good.
I remember I lit up a cigarette on top of a building that Carly and I went to for Carly to get pictures.
Dude. Hell yeah.
And for this particular building, we had walked up 7 industrial flights, so 14...
You were on the roof?
Yeah.
That's
then we climbed up a ladder to get on the roof part of the roof, and then climbed up another ladder to get on the fucking roof part of the roof part of the roof.
Damn.
Yeah, no, that shit was cool.
Hell yeah.
That shit was so cool.
And that's where you lit the cigarette? On the top of Mount Building?
Yeah.
Nice.
And there was some crazy shit going on there too. On top of that building, there had been water on top of that roof for so long, and soot on top of the roof, presumably from just dust raining down.
Yeah.
Shit like that. There were plants just growing out of the concrete.
Fuck yeah.
It was so crazy cool. And there were little ponds up there. I would not have been surprised if I saw some little fucking minnow in there.
Yeah, eventually.
I don't, maybe. I don't know if I saw algae or anything. I think what I had noticed was all of the plants that were outside of the abandoned plant, ironically, had just found their way up there. Like a bird ate them and then flew up. Exactly.
Or pollen drifting.
Yeah.
But, yeah, dude, birds shitting shit out. It's we wonder, oh, okay, this is a big jump. This is a big conceptual jump. Completely different topic.
Big conceptual jump.
Okay, so, biogenesis.
Yeah.
We wonder, where did this shit come from? But, if you look at, life here on this planet, just the way it exists as it does now, the behavior it displays, it's it's the self-replicating part of reality. It's that's what we call life, essentially.
Ah.
And it's who why we're talking about biogenesis, which is cool, but just like as a concept, is it possible for life to have a start? It's so self-replicating. Like, is it possible for us to even pin a singular point where life had a start? I don't know.
I mean,
to my brain, I don't know.
Yeah, like from what I've heard, my uneducated ass has been told that, like there is a specific point where chains of DNA begin to be able to intake resources and output more of itself.
Yeah, so you can pin like where DNA strands became structures to do what you said. But is that what we're calling life? Something that has DNA? Like, is that our full stop?
Well, no, because
that's what I'm saying.
Because viruses are not considered life, and that's because they require a host. They
viruses have DNA even though they're not considered life. Okay, no, I mean the opposite. Like, are there like things that just straight up don't have DNA that could be considered life?
Like self-replicatory?
That meet all of the conditions except DNA. So if DNA is your stopping point, then okay, that's your stopping point, but maybe some people don't see it that way or whatever.
Yeah,
are there life forms that don't have DNA that you know of?
The life forms that don't have DNA?
Yeah.
Not that I have been made aware of before, but
okay. So if that's,
I think that's like a really big postulation, is that what life might look like on other planets is just self-replicating chains of acids that are not like amino acids, not DNA or RNA. Like,
so what if it's that so if DNA is the hinge pin of what life is defined as, what if that's not a good hinge pin? What if that's not a sensible point to dictate whether something is quote unquote alive?
Well, okay, so let's parse through that then. What do you think would make a sensible definition of life?
I don't know if I have one.
Just like a useful.
I think about it a lot. No, I don't, because I don't know what I would define it as, so I can't come up with the words to yet. But I was gonna wrap that statement up. Oh, what I was gonna say is like maybe there's, other structures or common denominators that could be considered as a baseline for life rather than just DNA.
Okay.
Like what if, structured self-replication, if there's a better word for that, but like self-replication that follows not a pattern, but a predictable cycle of replication, maybe.
So, I think at this point we might be almost delving into like fractalization theories about the nature of reality, because when you talk about these things, exactly, like this sounds very, very similar to how when describing like atomic structures, and when describing just chains of particles, right. They have seemingly like desires,
right?
Like they just are going to be more stable in certain configurations than others and such. And in a way, I guess you could call that self-replicatory, and also like in predictable ways, like look at gemstones like bismuth and stuff.
Yeah,
that have,
I was thinking about that.
Like patterns.
Yeah,
and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
maybe I think
also, I was thinking about like the way mountains will have roots and veins. One of which is found in every creature that isn't a plant, and one of which is found in every creature that isn't an animal. Like roots and veins are. Yeah. I'm sure there's structures within plants that could be considered veins, but regardless, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So, I think I see where you're going with this, and maybe.
I do want to say, like on a universal galactic scale, like I would fully. I don't see any reason why those cycles couldn't be considered something akin to life, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that, but I also think that maybe like the phenomenon of life that we live is just maybe a natural extension, imitation of what we would call the material world or non-living things. And maybe the benchmark for life is not necessarily a prestigious one that gives us importance beyond like our human constructs,
Yeah, like I would be extremely hesitant to assign any hierarchy to any of this.
Yeah.
Or priority.
But I guess then, so what then becomes the useful part of, like, inspecting life, what we're defining
questions behind the scientific thesis,
Yeah. But it's just like, you got to know why you're doing something before you can, even test your theories or whatnot.
I think a lot of these terms that are now being defined scientifically have not always existed in a scientific way, or maybe at one point they did and lost their scientific precision as they ventured out into bigger populations of laymen, who aren't scientists.
Yeah.
So an example of that being like the concept of life, right? Like maybe at one point, scientists like just took this term and were like, no, we should define this scientifically, even though in so many fields like the common word will be nothing related to the scientific word because it lost its meaning. The meaning is changed, like multiple personality disorder. It doesn't describe anything really in scientific terms.
Yeah.
But everyone knows what they're talking about is DID. Whatever. You don't even have to define that. You don't have to say that there's a difference. You can just roll with the term multiple personality disorder.
How some people still say, like, I was diagnosed with Asperger's when I was a kid.
Yeah, right. And it's like, even though those are not real words scientifically, they're, they have a definite meaning. So, like, they have a definite meaning to the layman. So the word, like, life could just be a word that has a definite meaning to the layman, conceptually at least. Maybe they couldn't break it down scientifically, but in the science community it's like, no, we have to break this down now because this word exists, so we don't need to find another word for it. We just need to define this one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, instead of making a word for a DNA haver, they just say, no, life and DNA haver is the same thing. It's synonymous, whatever. I don't know if that is the scientific definition of life, but that was our scientific definition earlier.
It was. I couldn't give you, like, an exact and wordy definition, but I think that something that is alive is something that, intakes materials, outputs waste, and that reproduces either sexually, asexually, or in the case of very, very few animals that I'm aware of, they can kind of like molt into a new version of themselves. I'm talking about axolotls here.
Yeah, yep.
And that's certainly alive.
Asexually. Okay, question. What is your precisest definition of sexual versus asexual
reproduction?
Yeah.
So it would all depend on what your concept of an individual is, right? Because a single cell within, a single creature like us, a single one of our skin cells can, sort of replicate itself in some meaningful way, that is not sexual, right?
Yeah.
But that is as a part of a whole organized unit, and I think that is what you might end up getting down to when you look into scientific definitions of life is conglomerations of self-replicating, I guess,
cells?
Life forms, cells, or individuals, conglomerations of individuals that work to replicate themselves. And I think that even in like complex cells like bacteria, sometimes, one cell can be even visible, but within that cell there's a bunch of specialized, individualized parts of the cell,
right.
And so when talking about like sexual or asexual reproduction, again, it goes down to what your concept of an individual is. Well, I can...
Oh, okay. So within the fractal, if you draw the line at, like, our standard definition of humans and animals and exclude the individual cells within those humans and animals, whatever, would reproduce sexually, the cells within them asexually.
Yeah.
It's still a occurring life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, that's fractally to think about.
Fractally, just a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
But I think that asexual reproduction would be one wherein, even in multicellular life forms, there is no going outside of the super being to reproduce. It's doing it all within itself and spitting out a smaller version of itself, or splitting off into two smaller versions of itself exactly, you know, like for some bacteria, and then growing from there. That shit's so cool to watch. Have you ever watched that shit?
No.
It's maybe not cool, maybe it's extremely nerdy to say, but just like certain cultures of bacteria, if you take them and put them in a warm and dark and wet environment, but like you have a little bit of a light on, or like a night vision camera, or just every couple minutes you take a flash photo but like the way that shit grows is I don't know, it would definitely add credence to the idea that a river is a life form, just because of how much it mimics the way that gravity pulls
the way it finds
fluid.
The easiest path. Oh my god, I had seen, it was a spore, I believe, that can find its way through mazes. You seen that shit? So it's really insane, because it can, without visible feelers, find the shortest path through a maze. It doesn't fill up the entire thing, and then once it's discovered an exit, everyone just follows it. It follows the path from the get-go. Like, from the get-go, it knows where to go.
Whoa.
Yeah. Not from the get-go. It'll test the route. The ones I was seeing, they would... Slime mold.
Yeah.
Slime mold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
they reach out, and then once... Slime mold is a very interesting thing, because it also blurs the line of, like...
Life.
Yeah, well, what is a cell?
Yeah. Isn't it a single cell?
It pretends to be.
Yeah.
It pretends to be, but it can also split off entirely, and it can also go back into itself. Like, it can act independently with a bunch of different strains of itself. Right. And then they can all communicate with each other.
Right.
And then, like, re-solidifying
That's why
shit.
you get, like, the ones that are, like, all crazy different colors, but it's, like, they're all attached to each other. And, like, just, like, in maybe someone who knows nothing about it looking at it would be like, yeah, these are all different molds on top of each other. It's like, no, it's one thing.
One thing.
It's just one guy. Tame Impala is just one guy.
Tame Impala is just one slime mold.
It's just one slime mold.
Yeah, slime mold is so interesting. Okay, so I want to talk about what makes defining life useful.
The philosophical question, yeah.
Yeah, well, the philosophical question that... it's a philosophical question that's sort of also supposed to be kind of like a grounding question. It's like, what does that mean to our life? You know, that can be on many different levels, you know?
Yeah, okay, so that's what you were alluding to when you mentioned, like, a perceived hierarchy as well. Like that might be one of the, like... Okay. Like, going in, like, delving into what is life and what isn't, you think is, like, maybe a question that was asked similar to the concept of race, where it's like we have to start drawing lines or whatever, we have to start defining, and then that concept was deliberately made to exploit. So maybe it's not like that, like the intentions might be different, but it's like similar in that life is only being defined because of its hierarchical benefits.
How so do hierarchical benefits come into the definition?
Well, if you can define something as not alive, then you can justify harming it more.
Yeah. Like taking away a bunch of essential minerals from ecology by completely decimating, a couple acre stretch of stuff and making a giant quarry, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. But like harming quote unquote not alive things.
It's like they don't have feelings.
And like, because they don't have feelings, and as long as you can, I don't know, justify to the EPA that it didn't harm any alive things, then okay, it's fine to kill things that aren't alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that being definitely a use for a definition of life.
Yeah.
So then, do we meaningfully become more connected to the world and to the universe around us when opening up our ideas of what life can be?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you allow yourself to not presume that you know what is alive and what isn't, it seems like we define life. Because for a while, like, maybe this isn't true, but I thought I heard when I was younger that scientists didn't used to consider fungi alive in the same way plants, animals, and whatnot are. Maybe that's not true, but I thought that's what I heard somewhere, and now it's like, no, these things are definitely alive, whatever. Oh fuck, where was I going with that? I don't remember. I got too high.
So yeah, I do agree. I do think that by broadening what your definition of life is, it can definitely bring you connected more on like a whole scale.
I was saying that. Yeah, no, exactly. But yeah, I was gonna say like we're talking about life as defined by something that in reality is only going to be something that is relatable to us.
Yeah.
So, like, basically, by defining something that rigidly, you're suddenly, like, putting yourself at the center of being able to make pretty big blanket statements about the universe. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, of course, that's what... Like, it seems like the way we define life is something that is, like, has essentially a body. Some kind of definable body.
Yeah.
And, like, maybe that's not a good definition, but we're only making that definition because we have a definable body, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think there's many different angles to approach that.
Like, it's like defaultism, assuming that you're the default, and so life has to be relatable to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine trying to make a spider's life relatable to you. You're like, oh, this is my home, whereas this is like a genetically engineered death trap for any like little things, and you're like, yeah, well, it has agency, like it's choosing to look. This is like so artistic, and it's like, I don't know, we're staring at a puddle and calling it like a lake or something, and it's like, this has always been here. This is, I just went off way too far with that one. I made it jump in my own head.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that being said, counter-argument though, I do think that maybe saying that things that have a body, in the sense that we believe that we have a body, actually could be useful, because I think that a good definition of life would be something material that has agency.
Okay. Bearing
in mind that energy is, matter in a very real sense.
Okay. Counter question. So what about quote unquote hive minds? Like, do the individual creatures, I don't know if I we've talked about this before in an unrecorded conversation, but we're not 100%. I'm not 100% sold that hive mind reasoning is
illogical.
Just following orders. Bullshit.
Yeah.
What I was going to say with that is that, so assuming that it is, assuming that like individual bees within a nest have no free will, have no agency, would you like not call a single bee alive?
No, of course it has agency. Agency just meaning that it is matter and has the ability to change matter around it. The reasons for its agency don't really matter. I think that a river has agency, even though that is just entirely due to gravitational phenomena.
Okay, I was
thinking about agency as in like choices,
as in free will. Yeah, right. Or personal will.
Yeah, and I would argue that on some level, personal will is a myth to make us feel better about how little influence we have over our lives in the grand scheme of things.
That's fair.
Just because, at the end of the day, you only know what you know. Yeah. And that is going to inform everything that you do. So even though you have agency within those bounds, if the only thing that you know is my queen that is within inside of my head is telling me that I need to go and get honey, then like that is a choice.
Make honey. Yeah.
Okay. Because that is everything that a bee knows.
All right. So it has one choice, and it makes it all the time.
Yeah. Maybe. And of course it has other choices too as to what path to what flowers it can take, or that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Fucking.
Yeah. I don't know if it's like a hive mind. They have no free will. They're worker bees. They do the work, or it's just like that's just what they do, and that's their entire world, and they don't think about leaving that world because that is their reality. That's how they operate within that reality.
Yeah, and that's the way that evolution effectively works outside of humanity because...
outside of humanity?
Yeah, I mean, like, there are migratory species, but most of the time they're predictable in where they migrate to and from. And the reason that they migrate has to do with, I guess you would say, like, biological or environmental pressures,
Yeah, seeking comfort.
Yeah, right. And it doesn't take an immensely long amount of time on a universal scale for an environment to change, your genetic makeup. Mm-hmm. But because of the rate that humans have migrated, and how much agency we have displayed over the world around us, we have constructed our own environment through which to evolve. And it seems to be much more cultural and philosophical than it does seem to be, like, individualistic. I guess with the caveat that, of course, from fucking, block to block and town to town, conditions can severely change, and also local dialect. But that's what I'm saying. Evolution seems to be a product of culture. You don't get born immediately knowing that iPhone.
Because culture changes faster than evolution, it has a greater effect on. It has a very large effect on evolution.
Just on our lives, but not on our genetics, is the point I'm making.
Oh.
That's the form of evolution that we have now taken on.
I think, like, related to that, I think brains evolve. Within humans, at least, brains evolve much faster than our bodies. So I think, in many ways, our brains have just sort of, like, outpaced our bodies.
I could see that.
Because compared to other animals. Like, other animals, like, their brains are, perceivably, their brains are very, very good at doing the things that their bodies are really good at.
Yeah.
And perceivably, they don't extend past that. Whereas we do things that perceivably animals don't do, and like the thing I always come to mind, other animals, is like creativity. And it's like the only explanation for creativity as a part of a human's life is that the brain has to do something that the body can't, that the body doesn't need to. The brain needs to do something the body doesn't, because because our brains have become so evolutionarily complex that it has its own needs beyond just the body's needs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Brain has
entertainment. You too, like both the creating it and receiving it, consuming entertainment.
Yeah.
Although, like plenty of animals consume entertainment. I guess that's not necessarily true. Bugs are like Instagram for cats.
Bugs are like, I love that phrase. That's amazing.
That's not me. I wish that was me.
But I love it.
It's so good.
It is like Instagram for cats.
So maybe not consuming it per se, but definitely willfully at will consuming it, being like, no, I need to hear this song right now. We can't necessarily we can't perceive that animals go out of their way when they want to consume a type of content.
I guess. I don't know, birds sing.
It's true, and birds sing to themselves. That's
and
right.
Very many other great apes can perceive sign language.
Language. I don't. That's something else entirely.
But I think it is creativity. I don't.
Okay.
I very much do not believe that, language is a biological construct. Very much believe the opposite of that. I don't think that if you took a baby whose parent died at birth, maybe, or something like that, and then that child was born in America and they get taken to fucking Germany. Like, I don't think that child's just going to have an affinity for the American language, or not American, but English, I do not think that language is inheritable through any means other than verbal, or just by imitation, in the case of people who are deaf or blind, or not blind. You can still talk when you're blind. And when you're deaf, but not as well.
I wanted to jump back to, the definition of life.
All right.
Being, what is the purpose of it?
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say that I think it could be argued that, the human central definition of life, life being defined as something that is relatable to a human. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe that isn't something necessarily bad or instantly hierarchical, because if you accept that, our definitions of things should not be imposed on others, that is only something for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, with that caveat, then, yeah, whatever, it's fine to have strict definitions for life. That's because that's how we are perceiving it. That's how we're deciding to perceive it. That's how we're deciding to research things. I think that's very,
it's what makes it the easiest to compartmentalize.
I think that's a pretty Western scientific reasoning, I think.
Yeah.
And that it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I still agree that there shouldn't be strict definitions for life. There's no point. But how's I going to finish that off? Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that is just, defining it with hard points for any reason, even that, that's the most noble of reasons, just so that we can talk about it in concrete ways.
Yeah.
Even then, I struggle to see a serious point in not describing something deeper. like life is such a like living and unalive is just so dualistic, like I don't know. I just don't think like we need to paint that broad of a stroke on things that are alive and things that aren't alive. Like that's two. Like what else is there within our reality? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What the fuck else is there? So I think that like we could definitely afford ourselves deeper definitions. So something like this is a DNA having thing, because that is something you can like prove. That's not conceptual. That's something you can research and prove. We define DNA as this, and this thing has DNA. We fractalize it more, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You'll still run into those problems of maybe things being too broad of strokes, but at least there's like 6 strokes, not 2.
Yeah.
Not dualism.
I see you. So then from there, because with what I had said earlier about languages being entirely constructions of creativity. So like, what's stopping us from saying that like life doesn't have a definition? That's up to you. You know it when you see it. But like, as it relates to certain things, these are our different perceptions of like mechanistically what goes on that we can see.
I just feel like dividing any perception of our reality into 2, and maybe we don't have to view everything as individual spectrums, although I think life is a spectrum, whatever. Anytime you allow yourself to do that, to divide things into 2, it will warp. It will warp all of and act as a filter for all the information you then intake, and you've just closed your mind. Like that's a closing of a door, and everything else gets filtered through that. Like, because then you can't talk about forms that blur the line. You can't talk about like creatures that blur the line of live and unalive, without constantly thinking about that and relegating them to boxes.
Yeah. So then what do you think about the idea that definitions themselves, just like, no more of them?
No, I think that the definition is fine. It's just your perception of the definition, I think, needs to change. Like, words shouldn't control you. Right? That doesn't... As long as everyone you are speaking to gets spoken to the way you want them spoken to, the individual definitions should not have hierarchy over the overall meaning of what you're trying to say. So...
Yeah.
Like...
Sharing the concept.
Right. But that definition should be there to get someone going in the general direction, right? Of what you want. So when if we're talking about life or whatever, there's nothing stopping you from having a definition. It's you can't allow that definition to dictate what box you put everything in. You can have that as life is like, I don't know, like a thing that grows and self-replicates, maybe. I don't know, it's just like a thing. It's like there's a lot of things that can fit in some days and can't fit in some other days. Like maybe you're feeling, I don't think that thing's alive. Whatever, it needs to be fluid like that.
Yeah.
It needs to be subject to change.
Of course.
Constant available change. Like when... Part of the reason I think debate as a genre of interaction is kind of stupid, is because as soon as you've defined your terms, like, someone whose definition is completely different then has to bend everything that they say to fit those defined terms, and half the time one or both of the debaters would never have defined things that way. And so now they've suddenly got to like flip the whole language, and then now you're not speaking on your best thoughts. You're not speaking in the way that you do the best conversational acrobatics, because you're now relegated to someone else's terms. Anyway, the point being, like, definitions should be personal, and if you can't get what you're saying across in a conversation, you're definitely not going to get it across in a debate.
Oh yeah, of course. You
know, so the entire thing of like, in conversations we don't normally define our terms except unless someone asks, and then it's like fully good faith. It's not like a fucking rule.
Yeah, but also I think that most of the time when you're defining terms in debates, either you are re-inspecting an old term, or you are, so to speak, dragging a new term through the mud to see, just how much that term can handle, how useful it is and whatnot, right? So, like, say that to bring this back around, like, say that one scientist looks at you and says, yeah, for what I do, like, I study living things, I have to have my definition set at self-replicating chains of amino acids or DNA or whatever, because otherwise I will just be looking at the effects of gravity on rocks and water in contained environments. But then another scientist who is interested in maybe, say, like, taxonomy or whatever, they might say, like, well, we use this term, the tree of life, to describe, what we see, but ultimately there are causations for the, far roots of the tree that predate, the necessity for, carbon and self-replicating DNA chains and stuff. And so then your definition of life, even from a scientific perspective, becomes personal, and your definition of life for, like, a non-scientific person would effectively remain either what pop science they had taken, or, like, what bad education they had gotten, or it would be something entirely personal and spiritual, but now I really am interested in finding out what a bunch of different scientists think about the definition of life. How many scientists do you think are also philosophers at the same time, just because of the nature of studying phenomenon?
I think any scientist that is allowed to do freelance research, would have to be, like, the philosophical questions come first, like, before the scientific explorations. Unless it's something more like solving problems, like not personal problems, but like scientific problems that have been a question for a long time, and you don't have to have a philosophical debate before coming up with some math formula that's been questioned for a long time. You just go for it because that's what you do. Whatever.
Yeah, because the problems, the terms have already been set.
The terms have already been set. Yeah, I'm saying, like, I'm sure there are, like, loads, like the majority of freelance scientists who are, like, writers or whatever, or journalists who can just write into a journal about anything they want. Like, that's gotta come from a philosophical place.
Yeah.
Right? Like, at some level, or at least, like, the philosophical question has to be asked along the way, and maybe it's brushed to the side and whatever.
Yeah.
Ignored.
Well, I also think that maybe wholesale accepting the language of science might fundamentally change the language that you use, and so philosophical questions might take on an inherently scientific bend, which could get in the way of the philosophizing and kind of blur metaphysics.
I think so, yeah. I think it's similar, like I think in terms of philosophical questions, I think like ethics is probably a chain of thought that should be prioritized over science.
I suppose.
I think there's much bigger repercussions that can happen from diving into a philosophy unethically than unscientifically. You know what I mean by that?
Okay. Let me make an argument real quick. The only way that you can define what is or is not ethical is it is based on the direct effect on a population that either you should care about or that you already do care about. I think that's the only way to define what is or isn't ethical. And so from there, I think that there is like a legitimate scientific way to study ethics, or at least to compartmentalize ethics,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that that light went on. That's what I think. I had a second part to that, and now I'm too high as well, and now I feel embarrassed. Now I feel stupid.
Well, it's a really good train of thought.
Yeah.
I was finishing it in my head, like, because of that, science and ethics may go, like, fully hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so both of them are going to be drawn upon when philosophizing because they are related to each other.
Yeah.
Intricately. So no matter what angle you're philosophizing at, whether scientifically or ethically, that's going to involve the other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because the reason that you look at something scientifically is because on some level you believe that does good things for society, which does good things to the life outcomes and quality of life of people. Or if you scientifically break down what exactly some stretch of land needs to not be interfered with or needs to be intentionally interfered with to maintain a healthy culture that's like sustainable or whatever. It's like you can very much scientifically inspect any of these questions of what makes people's lives best,
Yeah, that's a ethical premise to a scientific endeavor. But I don't think there's always ethical premises to scientific endeavors. Like, I think that's like historically a fact, completely provable.
Yeah.
Columbus's voyage was a scientific one.
I suppose so.
No, it was. That was how it was presented. Oh.
Hello.
How you doing?
He's going to see a horror film.
Oh, nice. Which one? Oh, that was good. It was really good. Yeah. A little cheesy by the end, but the first hour and a half was excellent.
You saw The Nun too?
Yeah, dude, it was so good. It was like really well written, extremely well acted, except for one actor, and he was just like mid. He wasn't bad. He was just kind of mid. Everyone else was like really good. I don't know, just by my standards, that was pretty high. Maybe it was not that great.
Yeah.
But yeah, even people I went with, Greg and Chris, we all really liked them.
Yo, do y'all do family movie nights frequently?
Yeah, the three of us every now and again will do that.
I like that.
It's really fun. Really cool. Yeah, so I don't think, to my brain, I don't think some scientific endeavors are either philosophized about or ethically not filtered, I don't know, hashed out. Like, I think they are either purely scientific and the philosophical questions are put to the side by the scientist in doing its hyper-focus, or they're purposely unethically done, maybe not consciously, but purposely unethically done.
Yeah.
For capitalist reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe, whatever, purposely done. Maybe they're not conscious of how unethical capitalism just inherently is, but, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that, in turn, unethical scientific endeavors become philosophized by people who would argue that medical science would be nowhere near where it is without Hitler, which is a claim I have never looked into.
And that's bullshit.
It is?
Yes.
I'm 100% sure of it, too, but, some people would say that sort of shit, and it's just of course, science is not inherently ethical, but just that science is not incompatible with the concept of ethics. It's just two different lenses through which you can look at a thing that is happening or that you are doing. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And of course, with however many lenses we have to look at the world around us, what we're going to end up seeing is reflections or echoes of the other points of view. Because we are all trying to describe the same thing with different words. And I think that some people, say maybe hyper-capitalist or outright fascist or like Christo-fascist or whatnot, a lot of those individuals end up basically living in a world with such contradictory language that has to be true for the continuation of their life as it is, which has, been, it's an abusive relationship and such. And so for those people, you are going to end up having outcomes that are extremely unethical from, I guess a viewpoint that maybe considers many different slices, of course, everybody has a justification for what they're doing.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that is a form of personal ethics, which I think would argue is a very good reason why ethics should be tracked scientifically.
Yeah, okay.
Because when you are working under personal views of ethics and what is right and wrong, you have the capacity to do great evil and call it good.
Right. Absolutely. So,
I'm so happy I came up with
okay.
that thought.
All right. So do you think, this is something that just popped in my head. I haven't hashed this out at all. Might be a dumb question because of that. Do you think that maybe a next step in not removing, but just the next step towards healing so much violent culture within humans would be through that scientific endeavor of very analytically viewing ethics? Okay, so what I mean by that is by scientifically pursuing and documenting ethical choices made by humans, we can eventually overcome shit like Nazis.
Yeah.
Per se.
Exactly.
Could that be a path towards actual healing? White supremacy need not exist because we have scientifically verifiable proof that all of this bullshit is fucked.
Yes. I do think that an improvement in rhetorical framework of scientific ethical endeavors, which is the most pretentious statement I will ever say, ever.
Can you repeat it again?
I will try.
I want to hear that bullshit again.
God, I have to restart that sentence in my head. That's terrifying.
Scientific?
So, I think that the improvement of the rhetoric by which we present scientific and ethical endeavors, the improvement of that would culturally fix things in a sense. If you could have a language that doesn't need to indoctrinate, just fits reality,
right?
Where you describe fascistic behaviors as cancerous,
yes.
Or if you describe
a more honest view of a more honest, more opinionated, quote unquote, in this day and age, opinionated view. Way of speaking about it.
Well, but it's like the results of it are for years and years people commit suicide in high numbers for being trans.
Yeah, all provable.
Yeah,
all
all scientifically provable like causes and effects.
I mean, opinionated as in like people call it an opinion, not that it actually is an opinion.
Yeah,
but
well, that's where I'm saying that the improvement of the rhetoric itself, making it so that it is undeniable that these are not opinions, these are statistically and just like
you firmly believe that human culture will follow in the footsteps of current scientific documentation of that human culture.
It could benefit from it for sure.
Yeah.
I think that ultimately, you could document it as much as you want, but it is the changing of the language and I guess maybe not necessarily the construction, but the deconstruction of all unnecessary frameworks and building back up a scientific and ethical and moral framework based around, supply and demand on a literal level, not on an economic level, but just like what the world has to offer, what creatures inhabit the world, how we affect those creatures and how we rely on them as well. I think that those concepts are foreign to a lot of people because the language that we have to describe them seems very dense and complicated.
Yeah.
Because it is extremely dense and complicated. But if we...
but it's also not taught. Algebra is extremely dense and complicated, and that's taught.
Yeah, but that's undeniable. You cannot look at the rules of algebra and then...
Right.
Without getting into some crazy shit and making up your own equations, which you need a very in-depth knowledge of, either mathematical or real-life phenomenon to do.
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
That's the thing. You gotta find a way to bake those ethical statements into the scientific rhetoric to a point wherein fascism being universally linked to negative outcomes, and like the indicators of fascism being again universally available for anybody to know and be able to see is like when that becomes math.
Fascist mind virus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like once that becomes undeniable on a rhetorical level, the way that math is undeniable on a rhetorical level, because all describing of math is, within those rules or whatever.
Yeah. I have a couple things. The first one was, bounce back really far.
Okay.
Hitler made medical, destroyed medical science, created basically the Dark Ages in Germany. And the example I always think about is it was a Center for Sexual Health, I think is what it was called, in Berlin, and it was run by a Jewish doctor who was doing a ton of research on trans people. Yeah. And
you talking about Magnus Hirschfeld?
Magnus Hirschfeld, that was the name. Yes, yeah, and he was one of the first people targeted. So
immediately after Hitler gets out of prison.
Immediately, dude. So like that immediate like burn down. The book burning. Book burnings should be absolutely infuriating to Jews, scientists, and trans people alike.
Yeah.
Because of like how much research was lost in the burning.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
How much decades of trans people could have benefited so much from having that research. Anyway, to bounce back forward, I think that... Oh, fuck. I almost lost it. I think it's the tip of my tongue.
We talking about rhetoric fixing fascism?
Oh, okay. So, I was going to say that, like, for one thing, yeah, like, if science was more ethically informed and ethics were more scientifically documented, as long as they are also presented to the public in good ways, then it really is just like holding a mirror up to people and holding a mirror up to a society, and like fascists will be made insecure. Because like you ever watch a video of yourself interacting with other people, and suddenly you're like self-conscious at a moral level, not like how you look or not or whatever, but you're just like, I was kind of an asshole. Like, you know, like you hear a recording of yourself, and it's like, I don't need to be that rude about it.
Yeah,
like, I can just be chill, and it's like you end up seeing those things, and that's like so healthy. It's so healthy to someone's growth to like hear that, and like I love that like technology has, you know, had an influence, it's a positive influence on ethics in that way. Anyway, yeah, so holding a mirror up to society. There was one other thing I was wanting to say, and I forgot. But yeah, I was going to say that, like, is a way I think you don't even have to need language changes. Like, I think culture could be moved simply by solid documentation of ethics. And I think one of those, like an example of that phenomenon that I can think of right the fuck now, is how targeted, how much hate TikTok gets by conservatives, specifically because ethics, left-wing ethics, leftist anti-capitalist ethics are being extremely well and extremely scientifically and humorously and entertainingly presented to the general public.
Yeah.
There's no need for precise language per se with that. It's just straight up like
beam in the fucking BLM Joe Biden mind virus.
The woke mind virus directly into people's brains from the China Joe Biden app.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like
for some reason my brain just said Joe Biden foot fetish. Continue.
Yeah, I just like it's so beautiful that that we're having another cultural shift that we can, you know, the last cultural shift was the 60s, like the last major cultural shift that I can think of.
Yeah.
Was the 60s, and that was all because of acid. That was all because of drugs. That was all because of a new wave of nihilism and anti-Christian sentiment, but mostly because of drugs. Like all of that fucking game.
Well, that drug, I would argue, was a response to the collective trauma of first the Civil War, then within the same lifetime World War I, and then within the same lifetime of that person's children, World War II.
Sure.
And then like all of that, three at least generation long trauma.
Right.
Going into the 50s. And 60s, in that period of relative stability, you are going to have that reactionary push towards progress, and then I would say that America's setback was 9/11, and that before 9/11 there were already things going on, universally, nothing to do with Republicans or Democrats, but things going on in legislation which criminalized more aspects of living in uncapitalistic ways. And so I think that currently our cultural shift is reactionary to specifically the legal changes of the mid to late 90s and the cultural changes of the 2000s all the way through 2016. And then I would say that 2015/2016 kind of sets the stage for the current reactionary leftist era that we are in.
Well, that's COVID was a huge part of it. But I genuinely think it's so much of it has to do with media and just phones, TikTok. it's just like everyone, fucking everyone, dude, the most rural motherfucker alive has access to an app where you can scroll through 20 different countries in a minute.
Yeah, conceivably.
Conceivably.
You could do that.
And people do that. Like, that's all the time. Like, I'll just be scrolling and there's a video. You just see so much more of the world. You're not seeing it through a Hollywood lens. You're seeing it from another motherfucker who's also seeing you from their lens. Like, from your lens. I mean, it's just so... It's so fucking anarchist. It's so anarchist. Because YouTube is, like, all about getting consistent series going, essentially. Like, big creator... Not creator. Any creator, like, having to do some kind of content. Like, TikTok, you can just fuck around. You just take a video.
Yeah.
It's so low stakes. It's so non-content content. That you just see, like, I don't know, like, the fucking... I've been absolutely loving these videos by this TikTok user named Distinguished Gentleman, and it's this just old fucking, like 50s black guy making super saturated videos with, like, just ear blasts, bass boosted sound, and he's just, like, screaming while frying eggs and shit. And it's like, in what world is consistently coming across that normal? And, like, how is that not changing our brain chemistry? How is that not in some way responsible for the way, like, this cultural shift? I think it's a huge part has to do with the fact that we regularly open our phones and see ourselves. There's no way. Like, for ourselves through our own lenses that we pay Metro PCS for. Like, we're not seeing us through Hollywood's eyes or whatever.
Yeah.
The fucking Daily Wire.
Some people do.
Still, yeah, of course. And that's why people who watch TV are across the board more moderate to severely conservative.
Yeah.
Across the board.
Because that is what, on like a mass media,
that is what's on corporate mass media.
Funding. Yeah,
that is what's fed. And every single mass media will be saying in a month that healthcare workers that are planning to go on strike right now are a direct cause for your aunt not being admitted to a hospital or some shit. They'll have some anecdotal, stupid, cherry-picked articles, and and that's going to affect the opinions of everyone who watches TV. And then meanwhile on TikTok, kids are gonna see some videos of some fucking nurse breaking down exactly what's going on, and whatever.
Yeah. They're like, look,
they'll see 10 videos from left-wingers about the strikes and what's actually going on in 10 minutes. Meanwhile, mom has been intaking bullshit all day.
Yeah. I think that there are somewhat guerrilla ways to throw other people into your loop, but also I think that you have to be interested in leftist content to have it appear for you. And I think that the way that algorithms decide that you would be interested in mind-expanding content is by what you already have a predisposition towards, right? So...
Yeah.
I don't mean to say this as in, like, I don't think that TikTok is changing things. It certainly gave me an extreme amount of education. But I do think that... there were other societal factors which got a lot of young people interested in leftist values all at once. Yeah. There were people foghorning. I mean, like, Bernie Sanders was campaigning in, like, 2012, People were hearing about... Free college itself has been a talking point since, again, like, 2012. So it's like, you hear about free college and then you hear the argument against it, and even if you are interested in right-wing things because you were raised on TV, you go to YouTube and you find people who argue against free college. But then at some point down the line, you personally have some sort of disconnection with tradition, in a broad sense, conservatism, And then that interest is what allows algorithms to say, like, hey, people who are recently anti-Christian also tend to intersect with queer people.
Yeah.
And
no, I know what you're saying.
Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, for one thing, I think, like, I agree with all that, and, like, that's very true, and it's not like it's just, like, TikTok exists, oop, boom, now everything on there is leftist, whatever, but I do think there is, a balance that is being stretched. Like, it seems like right-wingers on TikTok are botted the fuck out. Because if you look at, like, the comment section compared to the following list, compared to the views, they're botted the fuck out if they have a ton of followers. Their videos are not scientific at all. They're low production, and they're just like the most scientific they'll get is like dunking, like debates. That's the ultimate debate content. That's the ultimate penultimate
second
super ultimate, whatever, like scientific way to approach any topic. And that's off-putting. That's not to anyone who has just like a moment of clarity in their lives, that's going to be like, wait a minute, actually no, I could be looking at this without whatever, I don't know, you know what I'm saying though.
My dad had a moment of clarity sort of like that. Like I was getting real into Ben Shapiro, and I was showing him
this sounds like a big story, and I'm really interested in it, but I have
it's so short.
Finish. Okay, go ahead.
And I showed him a few Ben Shapiro videos, and he was like, oh, interesting, because he agreed with Ben Shapiro. But then he watched a few more of them because they went into his YouTube algorithm, and he was like, I don't think he's really actually talking to these people. Like, he's just not listening to them. He's just kind of saying shit.
Yeah, right.
It's
exactly.
Like that happens when you get conservatives, a conservative algorithm on whatever site you're on. Because it's like, conservatives can't respond to leftists.
They can't, no, because they don't. None of their shit is scientifically backed up. And so that's why their main target is liberals, because their shit, none of it is scientifically backed up. Very little of it is scientifically backed up. Liberals will literally just exist as like to soften the blow conservatives deal against the rest of the world.
Yeah.
They're not there to fight it, just to soften the blow a little, make it seem like it's okay.
Soften the blow on maybe the people who live in the 50 states.
Oh, not the effect. The reprehensibility of it. The perception of it. Yeah, not the effect. They'll worsen the effect. But they make it look good.
Oh,
it's PR.
Yeah.
They're PR. So, fuck. I was gonna say, because of that, like, TikTok is like, it's pushing people toward the left because the left can present their views scientifically, and that's more respectable.
Mm-hmm.
And algorithm or no, there's just more leftist content on TikTok than there is right wing. There just is. There's so much more. Like, and the right wing content that's on there is not memorable. It's not. It's a guy doing a workout with some shitty dunk on him tweet that was copy and paste. They copy and pasted it. Like, that's, you know what I'm, like, that's the baseline for, whereas leftist content is like fucking just like people dissecting them, like metaphysically analyzing culture or whatever. And I have some of that shit if you feel like watching it, but like, that to me is just so much more real and respectable than anything the right has to offer on TikTok.
I feel like that's a good, segue into just showing me these TikToks.
Yeah, real quick though, I want to say, like, Bernie Sanders, whatever, has moved people toward the left, but I do mean almost at a more cultural, spiritual sense. Nothing has made, like, Gen Z as rabidly ready for violence against the wealthy as TikTok. Anyway, that is the cultural and spiritual shift that this scientific and philosophical and ethical move toward the left really needed. Really needed that. That, like, willingness, just the fucking, like, fully intaking the thought of we have nothing to lose but our chains. Just being dead as fuck inside. Like, that's not because of nothing but TikTok. It's my opinion.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And also a justifiable reaction to the recession we're living in. But
I also think that, like, public education was surreal, and it seems to me that your private education was surreal. I think that just because of the access to information that we have, like, we have more access to more complex information than we should ever have to parse out, that we also understand has a massive effect on our life. And just the combination of those things, like TikTok or no, Wikipedia itself could cause somebody to become...
Oh, God, yeah. Many sites could do that. Fucking Reddit could do that to someone.
Reddit, of course.
I just think that TikTok is so good with it because of the what it is.
Yeah, like the way that it gives you information, so you're not actually looking for
and
it.
How widespread it is.
Yeah.
Everybody fucking uses it. It's to my brain, like, it's probably the best at fully integrating entertainment and social media.
Yeah.
It's like the best intersection of it we've seen in years. Musically was almost all entertainment. People just followed celebs. They didn't really follow their friends on Musically. Everyone, like, treated it like a social media, whatever, but it wasn't really a social media.
Yeah.
TikTok fully is a social media. Like, Facebook had to catch up to mix the entertainment in there, and they had that, whatever. There's been Facebook sketch makers for years, but they always had to do it through the platform of a social media platform.
Yeah.
It's designed for social media.
Mm-hmm. Whereas TikTok presents itself as entertainment, but it is fully a social media.
Yeah. And it follows the rules of social media while presenting it as an entertainment.
Yeah.
The rules of social media being, like, how integrated messaging is to people, and how personal profiles are, and how they're not really meant, like, brands don't have a great time on it without being personable.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it says sponsored and you scroll right past it.
Yeah, it's very personal entertainment. It's entertainment that is for you and your friends. Yeah, I don't know, it's just fucking, it's mind-blowing the way it blurs that line. Yeah, you want to watch these?
Yes.
Okay.
Just hold your phone to your mind and we'll shout out the username.
Sure, okay. Oh my god. Okay, so this user is Dave Capozzi. Username is Dave Capozzi. Capozzi.
Was posted on a video.
Okay, so the comment he's talking about is, I'd love to hear your take on how Jesus is talked about in white churches versus black churches.
Video where I was saying that we might as well be speaking two entirely different languages when we use the word racism with other white-bodied folks who see the world through the lens of individualism rather than systems. And I said that it's like talking about Jesus in a white evangelical church in comparison to a black church. You're using the same name, but you're talking about two very different people. And the simplest way I can put this is that black Jesus knows what it's like to be lynched, and white Jesus is an all-powerful deity who will forgive you for lynching black Jesus. This comment was...
Damn.
Fucking insane. Fucking insane, dude. And this guy, the kicker of this is that this guy is an ex-pastor.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Holy shit. I don't know if I have...
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know if I can, like, add anything to that on
for
like
real. That's just a solid ass video.
It's just like how do you I don't know.
It's just a crazy solid video. But no, like I really want to like I just love parsing out in my brain like the way white people think about things individually rather than systemically, and like the way that like manifests in all of the talking points that conservative and liberal and Republican parties do. Like all of the talking points are individual and like on a framework of we need to figure out the best life for the individual person, and anyway, and that just being baked into whiteness and white supremacy and whatnot, and like colonial ways of thinking. And if systemic based thinking was a standard, like we would have fucking overthrown this shit long ago.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't have stood for this bullshit. We wouldn't have just taken and accepted it like a bunch of docile little capitalists.
Mm-hmm. It's for you.
Yeah. But yeah, the way that relates to how we think about Jesus is crazy.
It was posted on a video.
I do find it interesting how that tied in with how we were talking about, or maybe I would say like what I had said, fuck you, and what you're talking about now. I think it in a way skirts across my point about how the language itself that we have informs our own personal ethical frameworks,
Yes. Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I just find that cool. Great minds are thinking alike. That man said that cool thing, and it fits in.
Cool thing.
Okay.
Okay. So what do you want to? You want to watch Whiteness Isn't Fragile or Family Abolition?
Family Abolition. I'm feeling that one.
This person.
So I have this.
Shout out to this person, Samaya. Username arguably Samaya. That is arguably SOMAYA.
Debate tournament coming up in a
get this bitch pronouns out here.
couple of days, and in order to prep. So I have this debate tournament coming up in a couple of days, and in order to prep for that, my team is researching family abolition. And the crazy thing is, before I started really doing intensive research, I did not know basically anything about family abolition. I knew it was a Marxist theory. I knew it was related to sort of queer liberation and feminist liberation, but I didn't know what exactly it was. But let me just say, now that I have gone and actually done the research, the fact that we as leftists are not talking more about family abolition is seriously a problem. Back in the 60s and 70s, family abolition was a pretty big part of the queer liberationist agenda, but in the Reagan administration, it really got dropped for a more assimilationist view of gay and trans identity politics. In the modern day, there's pretty much one person really talking about family abolition, and that's Sophie Lewis. But I genuinely think family abolition encompasses so many of the things that we critique within the sort of nuclear family structure that we just haven't had the umbrella term for. Let me just read you a quote from the New Statesman. The family, Lewis and other abolitionists and feminists argue, privatizes care. The legal and economic structure of the nuclear household warps love and intimacy into abuse, ownership, and scarcity. Children are private property.
I need to take a pause moment here. I adore this already, all right? And I hope that she is going to bring this up, but I think that family abolition is a scientific endeavor, because I think that all throughout history the concept of a family has been effectively moot. I think that we as a social species have always conglomerated into groups bigger than our immediate blood relatives, and I think that in situations where we are out on our own, that happens as a result of cultural growth. The people come together, and over a bunch of years they develop tools and they develop techniques towards building sustainable housing in a way that you can take care of with 1, 2, or 3 people, right? But that still doesn't happen without a conglomeration of people much bigger than a singular family. And I think that the singular family is just an institution of control to begin with. It is supposed to limit your view of what can happen, and the ways that you can be, so that you can't achieve some sort of greater communal solidarity.
Yeah, and if you think about like what you're talking about with like towns and cities and these structures so much bigger than ourselves couldn't have happened without community construction. Like, oh my god, it's such a fucking nerfing of a population to pummel them with propaganda of the family unit, pro-family shit, because you're breaking apart the strength that a whole community had. And once the houses are all built or whatever, once the movement has been made, break that shit down. It's too strong. It has to be nerfed. It got us this far, but it has to be nerfed now. Or whatever.
Or
can
else
never take control, can never exploit, etc., etc.
If all of these people in this apartment building don't mind their business, there's a decent chance that they will never revolt and take ownership of the building.
Yep. Exactly. And you see that with legally
owned and fully economic.
You see that with just think about like factories, thousands of workers in one place with a grand total of 50 security guards, administration.
Yeah.
And it's like they have to be broken down by individual. Individualism has to be taught and thought about, because that factory would be owned by the workers if conditions were too bad on them. But you can make them too bad because we're all individualist thinkers.
Well, what are you talking about? Are you saying, look, nobody's here to help you to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got to take responsibility for yourself. You've got to, you know what? My father worked his way up.
Yeah, and then the liberal version of that is, well, you just have to make your workplace comfortable for you. I have a really great therapist. You want to recommend them? They're really good at coping with workplace trauma. That's the liberalist view of it.
Yeah. Although I think that most non-inherently political therapists that are out there that I've heard from, and the one that I currently have, I think that the focus is when talking about like problems that you face in your life, it's not been about like, you need to find a way to make this work for you. It's like, well, you recognize that you need money and you recognize these other things about your world.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah, exactly.
How can we,
right,
do the best job that we can do with like opportunity cost and community building and like safety plans and stuff.
Because most people are trustworthy community members. Most people are trustworthy community members with like whatever. It is just a few that ruin everything for everyone. Whatever. A few rich people.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like you don't even have to be anti-capitalist to recognize that societal issues won't be fixed by coping with them.
Yeah.
You just like the only I just think that like rich people therapists obviously don't think about things in the same way. And so their focus is going to be just all about coping with the status quo rather than even just talking around it.
Yeah.
Like they'll talk about it, but then with this fully like assimilationist and whatever, just copy way of speaking.
Okay, run back the video just a little bit.
Sophie Lewis. But I genuinely think family abolition encompasses so many of the things that we critique within the sort of nuclear family structure that we just haven't had the umbrella term for. Let me just read you a quote from the New Statesman. The family, Lewis and other abolitionists and feminists argue, privatizes care. The legal and economic structure of the nuclear household warps love and intimacy into abuse, ownership, and scarcity. Children are private property, legally owned and fully economically dependent on their parents. The hard work of care, looking after children, cooking and cleaning, is hidden away and devalued, performed for free by women or for scandalously low pay by domestic workers. Even the happiest families, in the words of writer Ursula Le Guin, are built upon a whole structure of sacrifices, repressions, suppressions, choices made or forgone, chances taken or lost, balancings of greater or lesser evils. If we abolish the family, we abolish the most fundamental unit of privatization and scarcity in our society. More care, more love for all. Family abolition asks us to take seriously the idea that children are everyone's responsibility, not just that of their parents. I feel like we as the left, during the
I love the fuck out of that.
Dude, every one of her vids is, like, so good and so mind-blowing. And yeah. Anyway, the TikTok effect. Some random person who's as old as you reading highly theoretical shit that you would never have gone and read it on your own.
Yeah.
Here, let's just listen to her take real quick.
More care, more love for all. Family abolition asks us to take seriously the idea that children are everyone's responsibility, not just that of their parents. I feel like we as the left, during the neoliberal era, really got scared away from the term family abolition because, like all abolitionist politics, like, you hear the term abolition and just assume that it's just immediately dissolving the entire structure without anything to replace it. But honestly, I think that talking about family abolition is a missing link in leftist politics, and it is leaving us vulnerable. Because if you notice, the constant attacks against feminism and the LGBTQ community are coming from the same direction, and it is the fascist ethos of protecting the family. Literally every time we as leftists compromise on our ideals to try and make them more palatable or try and fit them into the normative sort of structure of society that we're all used to, we are leaving ourselves vulnerable to attack. There is no better time to reignite the discussion around family abolition. It's literally so necessary.
Yeah.
So I have this...
Yeah, I thought it was really cool that, like, someone mentioned the term that we've been talking about so much.
Yeah.
Like, we've had so many conversations about how suburbs are, or just housing, the way housing works and the way private property works in the status quo, like, is just such a nerf to a community and whatnot. All centered around a family per home. I mean, like, it's even called that. Like, a single family home is a term within real estate and construction and all of this, whereas, like, you know, there's no whatever, a community center is not a living place.
Yeah. Never.
We have a term for it, but it's not where you live, it's not where you spend most of your time. For maybe it was thought of as a third space for some, but at this point community centers are like what?
You still do private,
a gym and a pool.
Exactly, and that's still, like, private within the family. Like, oh, well, the kids like to swim, and I get to lay down.
Yeah, exactly.
And you do get a little bit of third space communication with the other parents of kids, but ultimately, you understand that your responsibility is to your kid, and that if they or their kid threaten your kid in an even non-meaningful way, that they are no longer part of your direct community.
Exactly. And also, it's still within a capitalist framework, so, you know, community centers still have fees and costs associated with them, which automatically makes them a classist structure.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, though, that, like, community centers like the Warren Community Center, okay, so the fee is, or was, back in the day, $10 to go into, the pool area. But if you lived, in Macomb County, then... Oh, what's up, doxing the place I live? But if you live in Macomb County, or it might just be Warren, you could get a pass for the entire year. You could get a pass per person, like $25.
Yeah. Well, regardless, it's like whether, you know, no matter what the price is, community centers neither satisfy real needs, nor are fully available to anyone anytime they're needed.
They're basically just like a much cheaper mall that you can sort of have your own shopping,
just,
sort of, if you're willing to share space with people.
Right. It's just yet another place to spend money. It's not really a community center. Anyway, that was just so gratifying to hear. And I also like the term family abolition. Like, I never even heard that term before, so it's like fucking sick that there's a word for it.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw like in the titles, like within the first 10 seconds of her saying family abolition, I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't wait to hear the more scientific rhetoric around it.
Yeah. And just like those fucking quotes just like turns love into an inherently abusive and like power dynamic-y.
Dude,
like,
I remember thinking about that when I was a teenager. Is that like in the family, in the nuclear family, and I thought this was solely a cultural thing, not like a structural thing. No, like it's a culture because of the structure, right? But yeah, so back then I was just thinking about it like, okay, so women are treated like children, infantilized and taken care of, and children are treated like pets, dehumanized in many ways, and pets are treated like objects. And it's like, I just, like, I was thinking about it that way. I was thinking in terms of hierarchy. This is when I was like 19 or so. And I was like really developing some like anti-hierarchical views, but not really understanding the cultures around them and the structures around them. And so I was like, well, that's a fucking problem, obviously. And my thought around that was, well, it has to do with solely the patriarchy and the way everything is hierarchized in a shitty nuclear family is a reaction to the way couples hierarchize each other.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's sort of true, maybe, but that all of that is a inevitable reaction to patriarchal family units. And so family abolition has to be part of the conversation. Anyway. We talked a bunch more, but Lily's phone stopped recording. Bye.